Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special edition of RL AfterShock, a live-action studio edition.
Yeah,
Mr. Bacon is sitting right
do
next
the
to
whole
me.
shake
Let's
hand
shake the
thing.
hands things.
That was
back
weird
in,
last
back
night,
during the
yeah.
Neon Dream, people thought we weren't actually sitting next to each other, and just like you asked me to shake hands. I was like, I got to give Prothman a hug at this point. Like, just we are sitting right next to each other. We're here from the Neon Dream studio, a little bit less green screen and special Neon Dream, Neon Neo Tokyo graphics, and more in Bacon's bedroom.
Yeah, just Bacon's bedroom, like my artwork up on the wall, painted that clearly. That is me. It's not something generic ass basic shit that I got from a shop.
So we hope, at least. But anyways, enough generic ass basic shit. Let's talk about some Rocket League because, of course, we still have some tournaments to wrap up. The final show of the year this is going to be. We're going to go on a small break before we come back in January, which might be a couple of weeks. I don't really know how long it will take. Of course, we'll bring you all that information on the standard social media channels. So follow them at RLAfterShock on Twitter and twitch.tv/RLAfterShock. Of course, if you're watching this live on the preview, you can hit that follow button right up top and it'll take you right there. And type in !Discord, !Twitter for all those standard links to the Discord channels and the Twitter itself. So today's show is going to be a bit unique, mostly because we've only got one tournament we want to focus on, and the rest of it is just going to be recapping the entire year of 2018 in all of its LAN sort of glory.
Yeah.
And of course,
we are. I don't know if we titled this yet, but it should literally be 2018 Final Shock or something, because it is the last one of
Final
2018,
Shock.
and we're rounding everything up for this
the
year.
RL Final Shock. Holy
Yeah.
shit! I think we need to redo. I think we need to redo that intro. Bacon.
All
RL
branding
Final
redone.
Shock. But no, I'm actually going to do that. But regardless, let's talk about. Of course, obviously we've got no news this week.
Yep.
We don't have any mailbag, but of course you can.
I
ask.
mean, no EU-related news anyway. I mean, Denial apparently on the return, which
Yeah,
could...
fuck those guys. I just want to say.
Yep.
Just off the back already.
And
Like, I don't care
FlyQuest
who-
dropping their NA roster, but that's not like proper EU news.
Nah.
Weedham Girls still yet to announce their org pickup, which
implying that they already have signed.
apparently that's
Apparently.
as the rumor, but
As the
yeah.
rumours say. Ooh. This man's on the pulse. Right there, but we're not going to be talking about
I
any
can't
of that.
say otherwise. I'd get some people on really deep shit.
You probably would get into deep shit if we
Apparently,
said
yeah.
anything about it. But obviously, no news this week in relation to the EU scene. No mailbag, but of course you can ask us a mailbag by following our Discord in the show notes and the descriptions of the VODs. And of course, if you're watching live on the Twitch preview, it's !Discord in the Twitch chat. You can join our little community where we have chats and things. And of course, you can ask us a mailbag. We might even answer it on the show. So we've had plenty of questions from plenty of different people. So make sure you get that in for next year, because next year is going to be a lot of fun. For this year, though, again, as I said, none of that stuff. We're going to just jump straight into the Neon Dream. Because the finals were obviously the past couple of days. We're recording this on Friday. Of course, as I say, we're in that studio right now. We're sort of like talking things out and figuring out how we're going to end off the year. But let's talk about this one a little bit, because it was quite a little fun sort of a bracket. You can see the bracket actually coming up on your screen. Hopefully in a moment's time. There we go. See, MacGyver graphics as well, by the way. I completely was not ready to do this show whatsoever. But it's fine. As you can see, this is what we've got going on right now. Method taking a 4-0 victory above Savage in the grand finals after a 2-4 series in the winners finals. We've got XL dropping out in third, MCon in fourth, and you can see how the rest of the teams have weighed up in the quarterfinals and semi-finals and the rest of the losers bracket. So let's start, I think, with the most obvious thing. Method, relatively convincing. Well, I say relatively convincing. I think they only dropped like 2 games in the entire tournament, something stupid like that.
I don't know how many games in total, because, just on the final day, they dropped 3 games across the finals. So I don't have the stats on qualifiers and League Play 2 had, but what I can say is they did not drop a single series throughout the entire tournament, so not a single one in League Play. Of course, in qualifiers, if they dropped one, they would have to come back for a different day, but no, they came through on qualifier 1. And then here in the finals, not dropping to the lower bracket, Method had what is essentially a near perfect tournament. Like, the only way it could have been more perfect is not dropping a game, which, good luck in doing that to any team. If you can do it, top my hat to you.
GG, yo.
Jeez.
Yeah, but no, for Method, this has obviously been a very long time coming. They've been a roster that's, obviously, Rick's Runley and Burrito B were together during the Reason Gaming side. They had some really, really reputable names, and now bringing in Casio. This was like one of those roster moves where it was like, okay, this is not a player that's clearly much better than them, and so as a result, we don't think he's going to outgrow them and move on to do,
like
good
what
things.
T-Grade did,
like what T-Grade did and what Speed did, I'm expecting this to also be a team that lasts, and finally it's starting to come to fruition where they are looking like a really, really dominant force in the EU scene. Obviously, taking the Gfinity Elite Series a couple of weeks ago, that was a big victory for them, and of course their LAN run throughout the course of that league play was absolutely insane. So they've got a lot of things going for them right now. They've got a lot of a lot of good stuff at the moment, Bacon. And again, this victory right here, this very flawless victory, if you will, again, it's been a long time coming, but it's also something I think we were all expecting.
Yeah, we knew Method were going to pop off at some point. Like, we sort of, a lot of us, when you were looking at RLRS last season, the one just gone, you were there like, okay, we have got literally a top half bracket and a bottom half, and anyone from that top half can make it through to RLCS because they're of that caliber. You know, Secret, Method, Savage, Red Reserve. It just unfortunately came down to Secret and Red Reserve getting those top 2 spots, and then of course absolutely just knocking it out of the park going through to RLCS the next season. Now coming up this season, I'm looking at Method, I'm looking at Secret, I'm thinking you can take down, you know, Fnatic, Complexity. We have no idea what's going to happen there because the Complexity project as it is now is not working.
Admittedly, that's fucking say the obvious, isn't it?
Admittedly, we haven't seen them for a month, so we don't know. There's talks of roster changes, whether players are leaving that to go to new heights, like, you know, the thing about a lot going over to Mouse, which I think is a very, it's just a rumour, it's not true, because the captain of Complexity leaving Complexity when he's already signed on for a contract, that doesn't make much sense to me. I think it'd be probably Greasy being dropped and just going, right, that's not working. We know what Magnus can do because on the previous one, you know, back at Landon and all of that, Complexity to me were one of the strongest teams there, and Magnus one of the strongest players. It was just he needed that Mercenaries to continuously feed him. So here, Complexity have got to work on something. If they don't, then I'm scared for them because their current sort of like situation, their current playstyle, will not be able to beat, you know, your Secret and Method. So,
like, it must be a very scary time for those teams that have dropped from the RLCS to look at this like, okay, this is what we've got to contend with. These rosters look really, really scary. Like, you know, even with the guys who are still in the RLRS as it stands, you know, like having a team like Method come up and just dominate the entire EU scene on LAN as well, you know, during the Gfinity Elite Series, during this here Neon Dream Confederation Cup. Like, it really must be a scary time to be in the RLRS for these squads. But
especially when you look at all of these bubble teams coming through, and I'm even looking at them going, you know, your Stratus, your French Fries and that have shown some incredible results. They could knock out your Fnatic in that if they're not careful. Fnatic is secure for next season. I don't expect to see them go. Of course, they're not going to, over this winter break, drop their team. But after that, who knows contracts? Because generally with the Gfinity teams, like Fnatic, they're signed for a number of seasons, a number of Gfinity seasons, which roughly relates to about 6-month contracts, like rolling contracts generally. So it'll be interesting to see if, say, Fnatic drop in a hypothetical world, because they should be good enough to stay up in RORS. They're definitely a borderline team as well, so they should be a good challenge for Method and Secret. Like we're saying, can't really say the same for Complexity at their current state. But if they do drop out of RORS, I'm expecting Fnatic, because of the pedigree that they are and, you know, how they want to be in esports, especially with the esports items coming up next year, that they'll just pick up a different team and they will just drop those players out of the roster, because Fnatic I don't see leaving Rocket League for a while.
Hopefully not. I mean, obviously, in-game items are coming very, very soon, so hopefully that will make them stay. And obviously, Fnatic are a massive brand, so
Gfinity brand.
Gfinity brand, you know. Like, I mean, the thing is that when you think about Fnatic, you know that logo just because it is so synonymous with stuff with games like Counter-Strike and League of Legends and Dota and all those other sort of like different esports titles which are much more massive than what Rocket League is. So having that in Rocket League is obviously a massive thing. But then we're getting a little bit sidetracked from the whole Method thing right now. Obviously, Method doing good work for them. I'm really, really stoked that this team has worked out. Really stoked for Casio as well, just because he's one of those players that we see them come through the weeklies of the old rival tournaments and just be like, oh fuck yeah, man, this guy's on fire. And lo and behold, here he is, winning Gfinity Elite Series, winning Neon Dream, doing ridiculous stuff.
The impressive bit there was the previous Method man was Chakron. It didn't work, so they've gone from having this very defensive-minded player, Chakron is a great defender, and then going for someone that can be more on the attack, which is them just flipping up strategies, essentially. And it's one that needed to happen, obviously, because it was a bit like the whole Triple Trouble situation we were talking about earlier, where that change from Andom over to Speed was massive. Like, before that, I was even skeptical about it because it was a very last-second change where they had to do their sign-ups by, it was like a Thursday midnight or whatever, and they were only testing out Speed, just playing with him on like the Monday or Tuesday. So it was a couple of days beforehand, and that is a really quick turnover, but that confidence and that potential they saw was massive which had got them to the stage that they are now. It was well worth it.
Indeed, it was well worth it. And obviously, Method are going to be taking, again, as I said, a 4-0 against the likes of Savage. Absolutely insane stuff to sweep them out in the grand finals. I feel bad for you, man, because I got the good match. And
Yeah,
you got the shit one.
you got the good matches, yeah. But the grand final was where it was because Method had just continued that strategy from the winners' finals, which of course you casted as well, and then just were able to carry it on over. Savage had nothing on Method during that because Method just controlled and dictated the game to a point that Savage just didn't have an answer for it, and they were just panicking and got very nervous. And for me, that's disappointing because, like I said, coming into this, you've got Bluey and Devo who should have the experience not to make those mistakes, especially Devo, who's been around since, I think, even season 1 of RLCS.
We'll come up to those guys in a minute, because there are some other teams I do want to focus on other than Savage, and the other one's going to be XL. We've been talking a lot about XL sort of like addition with Breezy coming into the into the roster and how well they can do. I've got a bit of buzzing in my ear, Tractor. I'm not sure if that's anything in relation to what you're doing. Okay, sorry. Tractor's our producer for today. He's being a bit of a lad right now and staying an extra day to help us do this podcast. But XL. Coming to life, obviously we're talking about Breezy's addition. It was recently semi-confirmed that he's part of the main roster now. There wasn't part of the... Marky was not with XL for this entire run, but they had a really, really good run, They beat MCon very easily. They did lose to Method, of course, that eventual tournament winning, so that's fair enough. But then lower bracket, eliminating 1, eliminating 2, almost beat Savage as well. And if you haven't seen that fucking match... Go back and watch it. It was insane. I remember we were supposed to try and keep quiet in the studio when other people are casting. But I remember just hearing you and Ireland to the right-hand side just flipping your shit at every single shot. Because
Tractor as well, you remember?
And Tractor as well. Tractor was very loud, surprisingly enough.
He gets loud.
And obviously me and Crafters were like screaming our heads off. I'm surprised we didn't get a noise complaint about that. No. But it's fine because it was an absolutely insane match to cap off what was actually a really, really good run for XL. Imagine if they had made it to that final, though. How hype would that have been?
And how different it could have been, because Method, of course, had the answer to Savage, but would they have had an answer to XL? That is the whole difference. I mean, hindsight, you're looking at that going, it could have happened, but we'll just let it be what it is now. But XL is a completely new team compared to what they were. The addition of Breezy has rebirthed the team in a lot of sense. I know before this last week, I went, XL, if they win this, they're going to be repicked up, because at the moment they're playing that. Are XL going to continue in Gfinity, because they are a Gfinity owned team? So are they going to stick in? Are they going to stick with the roster? For me, looking at this, if you're XL, you'd be like mad to drop a team that could potentially again challenge for RLRS top 4 next season. Like, that is a lot of longevity, especially when org items are coming. Teams like XL now, if they give it up, another team is going to swoop in and pick them up.
And I think the key thing about XL is the fact they've just come into new investment, so they need to make some money back relatively soon. Not like in the next 2 months or anything like that, but
we're talking a year span.
Yeah, within a year, 2 year span, they need to start making some good money, and this is the perfect chance for them to keep a Rocket League roster. They've been around for a very, very long time. They've been one of the OG organizations. Not quite OG as like Flipside or anything like that, but when you take a look at the caliber of teams,
we're talking a year, 2 old.
Yeah, a year or 2 old. So having a team like this that actually could make some decent success, I think, is a really, really good. It's just a really, really good move for XL overall. I'm actually really stoked for the guys, because if go back to like the beginning few breaths of this show. Episodes 3, episodes 4, we're talking about XL and just like, fucking hell, what's this
where
roster?
They're gone?
Where have they gone? How far have they fallen from grace? The roster's just not looking good anymore. And now we turn that around with one little roster swap, and now they look really fantastic. I don't say they're RLCS challengers.
Oh, RLRS is going
certainly
to be absolutely stacked next season, because for me, the fighting for that top 4 spot now goes down to, like we were saying, Method, Secret, Fnatic, Complexity if they sort their stuff out, XL
potentially,
and then we've got a couple of these new dogs coming through, like your Stratas, your even Katafe were putting on good response.
Yeah,
MCon came through really well. AS Monaco have been improving slow and steadily throughout the whole of this. An experience like Leipzig, which I'm expecting those 2 teams to go on through to, and play in. I'm excited for EU Rocket League. Like, Leipzig comes at a perfect time. I'm sorry for the NA guys, of course, because they don't have a proper
NA.
They don't have a proper LAN, because they get Dallas and No, it's Atlanta, ain't it? Not
Atlanta.
Dallas. Dallas is CS. That's what I'm getting confused there. Atlanta and Toronto
Yeah.
is it? But they're before the start of next season. But we've got one for each. So we've got Valencia as well for the season afterwards. But this Leipzig is going to be so much prep time. Hopefully these teams will be able to get picked up by an org, to travel them out. Like when we saw London Esports last time, pick them up, and Veritas Esports as well. Pick them up, fly them out there, represent their brand, only on a month contract, don't get me wrong, but at that same time they might stick a hold of them, they get an RS spot, and instantly these orgs already have a team. If they don't make it through, then it's understandable that the orgs drop them, but it's that going in with a little bit more security for these players is perfect at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really hyped to see how that goes down for all those other teams. Unfortunately, we still have some more disappointing results to talk about. Unfortunately, we're going to harp on Epsilon again this week, which sucks big time because obviously we were trying to cheer on Cheerio last couple of shows. Obviously, we were talking about him and how he's going to retire. He came through and Epsilon performed almost about as far as you would have expected him to go. They did drop the Savage in the semis as we were expecting. But after that, they kind of lost control because they lost, as you can see on the bracket, against MCon and losers round 2. Now, this is not a result that we would expect from the matchup like this.
On paper, between these two teams, no. MCon, though, looking back, they had a fantastic tournament, MCon. But yes, Epsilon really should have been making it out and coming out 4th in this bracket. They shouldn't have been coming out on that joint 5th, 6th spot. So for us, this is a bit of a disappointment for Epsilon. But for me, anyway, it's an understandable one. They've just got to still pick it up. And I still believe Epsilon is going to work. It's just got to take a little bit more time because we've seen them have their massive highs. They've just got to make sure those highs stick instead of
exactly.
The lows.
Like that is the problem with Epsilon is the fact that they can go so far when they want to, but it's only if it's they're feeling it on the day.
You think of Thunderdome and how quickly they fell out of that.
Exactly. Like that was a disappointing result. But G-Finity Elite Series, obviously, I think they made it to the semi-finals. That's just an example of where they can go really far. Obviously they lost against Method.
It was Fnatic.
The Fnatic. Oh, well, semi-finalists at the end of grand finalists at the end of the day. So, Fnatic were still looking relatively good. Obviously, they're stepping things up of their own, right? So you take a look at a team like Epsilon, and you see that they can hit those highs. It's just a case of, as you say, getting that consistency to hold those highs at the same time.
And I'm not sure. They've got a couple of months to do that.
Yeah, they've got a few months to do that. Obviously, they have to re-qualify for RLRS. I'll have to attempt to qualify for RLRS.
Because they didn't make it last time.
Yeah, they didn't make it last time.
I think they were under slightly different teams, so I remember. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're happy. Epsilon are happy with their performances, it seems. So that's good that they're going to have an org backing them. Of course, they should be back in G-Finity next season as well. So Epsilon, this project, just stick together, lads, and build up that consistency.
Oh, spare a thought for Epsilon. We'll spare a thought for Savage as well. Because this team, I can see them being one roster move away from being incredible, I think, Bacon.
And I agree with that, but it's not a problem with the players, it's a problem with the setup of the team, if that makes sense. Exactly.
That's the thing. That's the thing. We've been saying this for ages, and I think it kind of did prove its point in this tournament right here. They struggled against XL because their backline defensive was just being dismantled. XL had so much pressure on their backboard throughout the course of that series, and the fact that just Savage could not quite mount up to it in the way that they were hoping for. Whenever they had aggression, it was fine. But when it came to reversing and rotating and coming back into the defensive line, it didn't quite work out that way. And the key thing about it is that these are world-class talents. Yep. These are all world-class talents. Devo, as you say, former world champion. Bluey, DreamHack champion, arguably one of the star players of this roster. And Alpha, this new gun who has just become arguably the best player in the team right now. He's been doing insane stuff. He
was the rookie of the season.
Exactly.
I think maybe even the MVP of the RLRS last season. Don't quote me on that, of course, but for me, he definitely was. He was the standout player to near enough come out of nowhere and put on a performance and really be the core to the Savage roster. Without him, Savage wouldn't have been making it through purely because you saw from last RLRS, Savage with Blue and Devo, they were just constantly in attack, and Alpha just had to sit back and near enough cover their butts. Last night didn't work so well because, and I don't want to be mean to Bluey in this regard. He was taking too much weight upon his shoulders. He was trying to do too much himself, which he was performing, don't get me wrong, but it was messing up rotations and his teammates. Then it felt like Bluey wasn't trusting them. We saw a lot of double commits going there. So there's chemistry that needs to be worked upon with this roster.
I'm only going to half agree with you there because Bluey also absolutely popped off at
That's
points.
what I'm saying. He was doing. He was getting into everything and playing really well, but it was also at that same time he was losing trust in his teammates because they thought they couldn't play up to his level. What we've normally seen is the savage level, and it was that mistrust, that sort of, not mistrust but distrust in each other, which made this team crumble to a 4-0 final. That sweep in a final we should have not seen.
All right, well, let me pitch something to you then real quick. Because I think they're one roster move away from being an absolutely incredible team. I think what they need to do is they need to replace Devo.
Yep.
That's what are you going to agree with that? Because they've got 3 striking elements. They could take one of those striking elements, what I think is the weakest striking element in my personal opinion. Devo being Devo missing a lot of good shots and a lot of tags and opportunities, just not going well for him. He's a bit inaccurate throughout the course of that XL series. Again, if you watch that XL series, you see exactly what I'm talking about. He was not in position for passing plays. He was not in position for the shots. When he took those shots, they were left, right, high, low, and then defended against by somebody else. I think he is the weakest element. I think if you took him out and replaced him with a much more supportive element from another roster, there's, I just feel like that's going to be that's the main thing that they need to do. Take that one weaker striking element out and put a much more stronger defensive or supportive element.
No, I completely agree. Like, maybe one of these players moves, like, we might get a promotion from a player from RLRS, because that's purely where I see that change would have to come from, because none of the other RLCS teams, or players, sorry, they don't want to drop to a newly promoted, because that's too risky if you look at that sort of aspect. They need a supportive player to be able to help them. If I was to want a player into that mix, I wouldn't even know or be able to pick who, because it's just so hard, because it doesn't seem like that there's anyone of an RLCS level that is free currently to be able to move on up. And Devo, then where does he go? Who wants to pick him up? Because for me, I don't see it happening. A lot of Savage is about its sort of like community, the fan base, the players, and that is also built around Devo as well as Bluey. And in a lot of sense, Alpha is the sort of quiet man to the roster. He is the sort of J-Naps of G2.
I really hope that doesn't end up meaning that he's the one that gets kicked out as a result of this.
If they're smart, they will not kick Alpha. I would actually be more scared that Alpha could leave for another team. Because everyone, not only us, is seeing that Alpha has a lot of power. Blue at the moment, he has to be the star man, and it seems like not any other team needs a star player. If he was to change, the only team I know that could be in need of a star player is Dignitas at the moment, really. And
but that's if the roster moves start.
If that does work out with K-Dot moving over to Vitality as rumored. But even then, I'm there looking at it and going, Bluey, with how he acts, with his history, going against PSG as he did, Dignitas might not want that, And
that is true.
It is sort of like in a case of if Bluey didn't go against PSG, he would probably still be at PSG, as we know. But, that's all in the past, of course. That's all from this year, funnily enough.
Yeah,
because, we think of that. PSG won Leipzig from this year just gone.
And then, obviously, Bluey's no longer on PSG. I don't know, man.
Bluey's a fantastic player. He has just got to hone his temper. It's the problem when you're, 16 years old?
He's 18 now, I think.
Is he 18 now?
Let me check. Hold on.
Jay's literally going to check. I'm there like, I doubt he can be that old. He's got to be 16, 17 at max. But this is the problem with younger esports players, and it's definitely a little bit of a problem.
17.
Okay, yeah, but still, it's
just turned 17.
Like when you look at other esports, generally the players are 20 or 21 is normally the average. Whereas here, Rocket League, it's ridiculously low, like 17. Where these the players haven't gone through enough in life, been adult enough. I'm just going to say, when you leave college and you're 18, you're there I'm an adult now, I'm going into a job. You still don't know Jack, do you, really, when you go into your first jobs?
We have similar thing in Counter-Strike where some of our best players, two names come to mind, is Simple and Smooya. Simple, I know, was known as a bit of a cunt back in 2016. Like, not even a word of a lie. Like, everyone saw him as a massive toxic piece of shit. And no one really wanted to play with him. It was only until eventually he was picked up by a much more veteran player in Hiko for Liquid. He started really, maturing and becoming took him under his wing like an old dad or something. And eventually he became much better as he got older. He became much more mature. And also Smooya as well. He's currently in that phase where he is a bit of a cocky shit. I love you, Smooya. Owen, I'm not going to denounce our friendship at any stretch of the imagination, but I cannot deny that you are a massively egotistical, cocky player.
Well, that's because he's on the rise, and everything he's doing is golden. It's quite easy. It's the same which happened to Bluey. That's where all that ego came from.
I mean, he has the right to be, obviously, because he's absolutely insane. We can't take that away from him. But obviously, that's not going to work out for you in terms of being, a good professional.
Yeah.
Because that just doesn't work like that, and that's the problem that Bluey faced with PSG. I hope it's a problem he doesn't face again with Savage, because I think this is Bluey's really good chance to make it back into World Rocket League, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you just got to be looking at that and looking at this roster with all they've done. For me, like, Devo being on the roster, being that previous world champ, has got to help getting in orgs or whatever because of that. But you look at Bluey and, like, the reason why it's dropped by PSG, which is public knowledge. I don't know how much research esports orgs do, because you do get some which look deeply into a team. Then you get others that are just there like, oh, they're in RLCS, let's just whack them with a paycheck. And so, for me, Bluey's got to be hurting this roster in the sense of orgs coming in, but he is the main strongest showman star player of Savage, so you wouldn't get rid of him. Like I was saying with Alpha, you wouldn't want to get rid of him because he is your core. They just need that second supporting player, and I honestly don't know where you would go for that. I mean,
like I said, I still think Devo needs to go. That's
yeah,
my opinion.
No,
but as you say,
I agree. If you're making that change,
of
because you have to, because the problem with EU Rocket League is that it's so defensive that at RLCS they're going to be able to handle all the attack that Savage can put on. At RLRS, it's not as refined and all of that, but in RLCS, they're just going to absolutely be able to dismantle Savage, get a couple of demos in, and get those counters going.
And we already saw that from Method, obviously.
Yep.
They're not even an RLCS team, and they were able to dismantle
to some degree,
Savage
XL, who had to become a little bit more defensive.
Exactly, and when they became defensive, when they were able to counter-attack and put pressure, which Savage weren't able to deal with, then you suddenly had a bit of a shit show for the Savage side. And certainly there could have been some games where they could have won very easily. Although I will admit, 5 overtimes in 7 games, or something, 6 or 5 overtimes.
It went to game 7, and it was 6 overtimes, I'm pretty sure. Was it?
Regardless of how many...
No, because the last one wasn't, so it was 5 overtimes in a row.
5 overtimes is going to prove my point once again. Go watch that series back, because it was bloody insane. My voice is a little bit raspy. I can't tell if you can, I don't know if you could tell. That's because that's the aftermath of that particular series. So, yeah, thought for Savage. I think, again, that they could be well beat. It just comes down to that one thing. So to wrap up on the Neon Dream, we're going to talk about Stratus for a little bit, because as you can see on this bracket, they didn't fucking play. I've been tilted. I have been tilted so many times in the past, Bacon.
Especially from the reason I gave you.
Especially off of this reason, which I'm going to let you fucking say.
So, one of the players, I'm not saying which player, because I actually don't know which player.
I would love to know myself so I can smack him upside the back of the fucking head.
Because Stratus is one we will keep backing, because this is a great future team. But one of the players had to go watch a pantomime, which is a very British thing anyway, so the rest of... It's like a theatre production, with his family at 6:30 on day 1. Like, I'm just... Yeah, Jay is triggered, so... You're just there looking at... Your family's surely got to understand at this point, because especially if you're getting to this stage, every single one of the players that make it through to top 8 here are either pro, semi-pro, or have to be potentially looking to go there at some point. And if you're literally focusing on this, rightfully focused on Jay there to show the trigger. But if you're focusing on, I don't know, family time instead of what is technically work, yeah, your priority's in the wrong area in my regard there. I mean, and that's pretty much because I look at Stratus and we were talking at this at the same point earlier, like Stratus. This year has been a great little evolving of English and British Rocket League, because last year it sort of came down to, I don't know, Devo, Bluey, Marky,
Stretch,
Tapo, because Welsh, Ignite, Doomsy.
Like, is that a doozy, maybe,
for
possibly.
a region that at the very start of Rocket League was a very strong one, it dropped off. Now we're seeing these English players like Flux and Chippy come through from Stratus. We have got Ixo Breezy. Like, just the name 4 straight off the top of my head there. That is a big influx for next year, which is going to be good. But
you got to take this a lot more seriously.
Yeah, that is pretty much it.
And do you know what? I do want to level a little bit of understanding, because I know family time is, like, appropriate and everything, but at the same time, like, there's got to be some sort of level of reasoning right there. Like, you know, again, I understand what it's like to have a very unreasonable family. Like, you should see my fucking mum, right? She has no faith.
The point is,
like,
drop a Gfinity Winter Series night.
Yeah.
But don't drop the finals of a Psyonix-sponsored event. This is literally... This tournament was not made for the RLRS teams.
It was made for you.
It was literally made for Stratus, Monaco, Getafe, and MCon. That is the 4 teams from this top 8, which this tournament was aimed at to improve them. And we can see it's improving them. But you've got to make it on through, because Stratus, I could have seen with an upset win against Epsilon here, probably not get that win against Savage, but they could have even been MCon and come out top 4 Stratus quite fairly. I think that, like, for me, this was the premier team out of all the bubble teams that are coming into this tournament. They could have come 4th, and you would have think going with Leipzig coming up. I'm sorry, this would have team, like, you're so close. We could have got Stratus to Leipzig under an org, because we know there's some English and British orgs especially that are looking at it, with LANs coming around Britain as well, picking up if you're Insomnia's LANs, we're trying to improve that. You could have got an org there, got sent across, but if you're not showing up for the finals, if you're just dropping out, these orgs aren't going to have trust in you, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and just to take a look at the bracket again real quick, you see where Stratus were. If they actually pulled the upset victory against Epsilon, that's certainly a relatively likely thing for them.
Yep.
They would have probably dropped the Savage, sure. Then they probably could have taken a fight against MCon, probably would have dropped the XL. So yeah, top 4 is not even that far gone for them. You know, it actually is something like, is a reality that I could see happening for Stratus, but unfortunately,
sorry, it's behind your laptop. But even then, if they would have dropped to Epsilon that first game, AS Monaco, I can see them beating. Then coming up against XL, that is a little bit of another one like Epsilon, either way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, it just sucks so fucking much, because again, they have so much talent, they have so much potential. You know, Stratus are such a good up and coming team, and again, this Renegade Cup stuff was created for them. It was created for you. So please, there's a reason I stress about it every fucking week.
When you're given the opportunity, don't fuck it up.
There's a good reason why I stress about it every week, is the fact that if you don't show up to these tournaments, Psyonix will not put them on. As you were saying last week, they are already pissed off with the number of DQs we had during the regular group stage. So having this come through and a team's DQ'd out of the quarterfinals, just like, fuck, man.
It looks bad, because it looks like Psyonix is putting on these events and people aren't taking them seriously. People aren't taking the developers of the game seriously. So
if they can't take the developers seriously, who the fuck can they take seriously? No one.
And at the same time, Psyonix are using these events to bolster up the orgs. If players aren't taking these orgs seriously, like, you know, Rewind, Veritas, Rocket Baguette, then what sponsors are going to be taking us seriously? You want Rocket League prize pools to increase, you have to take them seriously for orgs to then look in and want to sponsor us. Because if you're just dropping out left, right, and centre, orgs will look in and just go, yeah, your players aren't really playing. And that is the most frustrating part, I think, because us tournament organisers, they're putting on them, us casters are putting in the work, but players don't really care and then whinge when they're not getting enough money put on. And that frustrates the living daylights.
It's a UKC mentality, which is just like, mate, I'm going to fucking end you. But, you know, all serious now, obviously.
Called Switchblade J for a reason.
Fucking A-right. But, you know, to the cap off that whole thing, you know, obviously... You know, bullshit aside, Neon Dream was actually a really, really fun tournament thing. I actually really enjoyed the theme of things, because we didn't go too far into the roleplay aspect of things.
No.
Which is, you know, I don't think it was too harmful to the broadcast overall. But, you know, honestly,
the graphics
overall,
were absolutely.
Oh yeah, no.
Talking to Psyonix and that, we can pretty much say no one is going to be able to beat us on the Renegade Cup, barring maybe the official Psyonix stuff right in February, but that's a little bit of a cheat to that. Community-wise, Rewind absolutely loved the lads, and big props to Andy Designs and Edward Nottingham for the work they did. Not only Andy on the 2D stuff and Ed on the 3D stuff, massive props, and I already know Andy's actually working on the next Renegade Cup stuff.
Oh,
So
is he?
they might be able to beat us. Who knows?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past Andy, man. Andy's insane.
He is good.
Again, if you're looking for a good graphic design, see that logo at the top? I can't see that logo at the top?
Somewhere there.
He designed that. You see all the rest of the assets you see on AfterShock every week? He designed that. Not these ones. This is makeshift shit that we didn't. This is GIMP bullshit that we did.
This is what it is.
Yeah, okay, so end of the Neon Dream, fantastic tournament. Again, I'm really hyped for the next and the final monthly coming through in January, which I can't announce who's been doing it yet, but I know that I'm already working on it.
Yep.
So, commiserations, Bacon. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
But it's still.
It's fine. We got another buddy working on it.
Yeah, we got
so
another buddy
fine.
working
It's
on
a
that.
team
I won't
crew.
reveal who because that's just not my place to say. But regardless, again, it's going to be fun. Again, it starts in actually the very end of the month.
I think it starts next week.
It starts next week in 7 days.
That scares me as well. Is that being broadcasted next week? The qualifiers.
It's not being broadcast.
Okay,
they're not
that's
broadcasting
like a little
the
bit of
qualifiers.
time off, I guess.
I imagine the announcement will come through between now and the release of this podcast. So again,
Yep.
we're pre-recording this on Friday, if you're not aware. So when this comes out on Monday, there's some little bits of information that might be out of date, some pieces of news we might be missing. But if it is announced, then GG. Make sure you sign up for that tournament. It starts qualifiers on the 28th and the 29th. So, with that being said, that is basically the last tournament done for the year.
Yep.
I mean, this would usually be the point where we'd end the show.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that because there are plenty of things we have to talk about. Obviously, this is going to be the final show of the year for AfterShock, and what better way to celebrate a great year with a great podcast and recapping the great year that podcast was born into. So we're going to take you through a journey down memory lane, if you will. We're going to go down memory lane here, that Bacon. We're going to talk about some of the bits and pieces that we enjoyed, some of the events that we also see was significant in the Rocket League space. I'm going to start with some personal highlights, I think.
Yeah.
Because for me, there was a lot of different things that really went down this year that I was like, right, this is fucking A-right. It was fantastic for me to experience, fantastic for me to cast and to watch. And obviously for yourself, there's always some bits and pieces that you also enjoyed as well. For me, I'm going to start with OCE. I know this is an EU podcast, but OCE, we're going to be talking about them a lot more, I think, in the next year. We're an EU podcast, but when it comes to international affairs, obviously we're still going to focus on those when EU are involved.
Leipzig comes around, maybe see Chiefs there.
I can honestly see Chiefs being in a Leipzig tournament.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see what OC has to do in the next year. I mean, obviously top 4 at Worlds was one of the big things. I was like, holy shit, they are actually really legit now, aren't they?
Coming out top 4 at the world stage, and you're just there like, what is it? 2 from EU, 1 from NA, and that's just basically OCEs getting to the par of top end NA. It's scary then because OCE is this whole slightly different style from the rest of them, and EU and NA were focusing on each other. So coming into RLCS in LAN Vegas, it was like everyone had sort of forgotten about OCE. They were like off to the side. You're too worried about Dignitas. I mean, Cloud9 worried about Dignitas enough to come up with a completely and utter counter strategy to them, so fair enough to them. But for everyone else, they've forgotten about OCE, and Chiefs just came in like, boys, you better not forget. Boom, knock them down, come out 4th, and that, for me, super impressive.
Very, very impressive stuff from the OCE side, and just one of the big things that happened this year. Obviously, Sonic's also announcing that they're going to be supporting in-game items. There's still a bit of skepticism around that whole thing, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Obviously, if we didn't have any in-game items, I think we'd be down a much worse road at the moment. Like, at the end of the year, there's still a lot to smile about this year. There's still a lot to be happy about, and I think in-game items, if that didn't come into effect, especially after everyone bitched and moaned about it on the subreddits, on this podcast, on Twitter, on every other bit, and Sonic still so silent about it, I'd say there's probably a lot less to be happy about with Rocket League. But the fact that sort of kickstarted a bunch of really good news with new hires and the circuits coming through, and obviously E-League coming back, and obviously the Renegade Cup that came follow with that, I feel like it was. Excuse me. I think it was a really good sort of like landmark moment for Rocket League, not just because it's in-game items, but also because it just kick-started a lot of really good shit for Rocket League.
It has, and like since then, don't get me wrong, I was a little bit annoyed about the late announcement of E-League and that, but everyone was there like, it's going to happen. Late announcements
in Psyonix, they were more iconic duo at this point in this fucking game.
I can't go on like how it is working as a TO, of course, but yeah, late announcements, you get used to that with Psyonix and just have to deal with it at all stages. But yeah, for me, not only just, the science events coming in, but stuff like Ballistics Brawls coming through, where this is outside sponsored events. So Ballistics Brawl had nothing to do with Psyonix, and Ballistics, the RAM makers and all of that, coming through and sponsoring not only one season but two. That for me, again, it's a bit like I was saying about. It shows that people are wanting to get into Rocket League, but they're not too sure, and why Psyonix building up these community orgs, giving them some money to run events is going to be great for next year, because it basically means these sponsors have orgs to go to and run these events for them.
Exactly, and that's the thing that gets me most excited, especially about Ballistics Brawl. We're going to be covering both those seasons in our little wrap up per bit. But those guys are really, really cool dudes. They sponsor a lot of money for the Rocket League scene. I mean, it'd be nice if Psyonix could just lift that cap off so they can put even more in, because I think they would love to do that. Again, it's something that I say hill I'll die on every fucking day. Like, I feel like that now that we've got $1 million in prize pool, Psyonix need to lift that $5,000 cap. Like, it just needs
not
to
lift it, raise it. I say.
When I say lift, I mean
minor
when
events.
I say lift it, I mean literally lift it up higher. Like,
because
not go so far as to take it away entirely, but like just raise
so on that note, I expect that to happen after the Renegade Cup finals, because the finals are 15,000 for each region.
20,000.
Is it 20,000 for each region? Damn. But
20,000 for each, for 20,000 for all the monthlies, so 5,000 each, and then 20,000 for the finals.
Okay, but yeah, I expect that to then get risen higher. Because I thought it was 15. I was going to say that it needs to be risen to about 30,000. Then they put like the minor stages, ballistics and all of that, and cap that at say 15. So that it's that little progression, because Psyonix is always careful about that progression. It's understandably, rightfully so. We have seen many. Definitely MOBAs do this, where they just then suddenly throw in $1 million for the first year, and after that first year, it's dead. Because
Heroes of the Storm.
Jeez, okay. Yeah, I think you need to go to the doctors about that cough.
I'm kidding, right?
But yeah, it's definitely a case of they're slowly building it up, and once they get the infrastructure of org items in place, they'll be able to really hit home, I reckon, where they'll be able to raise the prize pools of near enough everything. Psyonix sponsored events, I'm expecting Renegade Cups to continue. Their current format, maybe not. Like, one thing we're definitely pushing as TOs is like not a whole month long, but 2 weeks of each month, because tournament fatigue is definitely a thing. Like every single Wednesday and Thursday, the best teams are having to play. The top 8s near enough are coming back. You look at Stratas where, this isn't a professional thing for them, and even then, you've got uni at the same time. It's quite hard to put that amount of time in. But 2 weeks of every month is more understandable. And it means as well, if you're a viewer, just not there like, I can tune in the next week, and you just sort of forget it and just leave it till finals. No, you want to watch every single one.
Yeah, you absolutely do. So I'm excited to see how far Ballistics Pro will be able to take that again with more prize pools coming through. Obviously, you mentioned the Renegade Cup. That's a fucking fantastic thing. I don't think we have anything else to say other than that. It's just fucking amazing. Thank you so much for putting that on. And of course, for me personally, a highlight that I love is just working all those Renegade Cup tournaments and all the other online tournaments we've had. Like the Rival 1K Cup was a really memorable one. I'm never going to forget that one in my fucking life.
That basically was nuts to show there is the top end support when you had stuff like Dignitas, was it Weedham Girls and PSG and Flipside, sorry, they were the 4 invited teams, like willing to back a $1,000 cup, which you're looking at that and sort of going, I would understand if these teams didn't want to play in it purely because the money's maybe not worth it. But no, they just want to play good Rocket League. As long as there's good competition, players will sign up. I mean, what was it? From the Autumn Open for EU, we had Secret there, just literally they're like, we just want to play in this to go up against the good teams. We don't care about the money. And it's purely because they know that's how you progress in Rocket League, and that is the right mentality to have.
Yeah, and working on those other tournaments as well, where we have got top teams. Like 1K Cup was fucking amazing. That grand final with Dignitas and Smiley Face, which will break them down more in a bit detail. That was one of the best grand finals I've ever done. And plus the Coliseum, where we had the grand finals for that as well. PSG versus not Triple Trouble. Who was it?
Weedham Girls?
Weedham Girls, that one, yeah. PSG versus Weedham Girls was fantastic. Even the semi-final that I covered on that one, Triple Trouble versus PSG, was like, oh my fucking god. And obviously this Neon Dream tournament that we just finished up, obviously I'm having fucking fantastic times. Just so many memories created in Rocket League.
Yep.
Honestly, it reminds me of my first year in Counter-Strike. The amount of memories that I created there, just doing like loads and loads of different like big, relatively big tournaments, sort of like not so like massive.
Big minors.
Big minors, yeah.
So.
That's a bit of an oxymoron there, but big
Yeah.
minors.
Well, you like for anyone that doesn't really know the sort of understandable part of how you classify stuff. So your premier events is RLCS. That is it. And to some degree, you could say RLRS purely because it is a Psyonix
Nah, because it's a
official
step
one.
down. I'd say that's
like
more like a
weird.
major.
That's what I'm there trying to think. Like your major events, though, I think is one-offs is like your
Yeah.
E-League, DreamHacks, Northern Arena, that sort of thing. And then your minor events are these Renegade Cups, where they're not big prize pools, but this is the emerging talent. And then every now and then you do see, like with Ballistics, the bigger teams sign up for it. And that's just how the whole ecosystem. We're actually getting to a point in Rocket League where we have a very solid ecosystem, I think. Like before, you might have said it's a bit sparse. Like, what was it? We were talking about before, July was pretty much a dead month for Rocket League. It was a bit unfortunate.
Apart from the Universal Open, which was just like not even a proper tournament.
It's 2v2, so it's not like proper comp. And to that degree, whether there's another Universal Open next year, because it was the only tournament where it actually lost viewership compared to the first year.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Psyonix just drops 2v2s and leaves that to minor events, which I think is probably the wiser choice, and Universal Open just suddenly goes, right, it's now Universal Open 3v3 held at that same time. I'd be more than happy, and I think the entire community would be happy with that.
Well, considering it was $100,000 for the 2v2 side, and Northern Arena was running about the same time that was 3v3 had $50,000. That's like a fucking like what the shit are you guys doing essentially? Yeah, we will talk more about that in a minute because obviously we've got through our personal highlights. Anything else you want to bring up before we?
Well, Landon, being part of that, the crowd experience.
That was probably a given, honestly. Like it's fucking Landon. It's fucking Landon. Like, what else can you say? What else can you say other than it was fucking Landon?
I think it's the first time where if we went back to EU and it was London again, I don't think anyone in EU would complain. Like, because it's generally like with NA, they're like, oh, we want this moving around countries. Even EU is like, after Amsterdam, we were like, okay, we've had Amsterdam. Let's go to Germany. Let's go to Paris. Let's go to London, of course. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind if it was
absolutely.
Berlin or Paris, but if it was like London, I'm there like, boy, that is the one I want most because it was perfect.
Honestly, it was the perfect event in my opinion, but it was not the only event. We had plenty of events, and we're going to start things off in chronological order as we run down our recap of how the year went for Rocket League with DreamHack Leipzig.
Oh yeah,
the first major LAN of 2018. You can see it up on your screens at a total of $50,000. So not the biggest thing in the world, but it was also an open tournament, a DreamHack Open, which was sponsored by Monster Energy and stuff, supported by Psyonix to a certain extent, but not by a massive amount. And obviously,
well, the broadcast talent that was done by Psyonix, as you can clearly see on your screens right now, it was the Psyonix crew. And this one I actually did love, and it was like, for me, it was the major loss of Gregan from the casting talent when he went to Manjat. Don't get me wrong, it's understandable in his case because it was solid work for him now being the manager of Renault Vitality. But I just wish we could have seen him casting along, it was alongside Shogun. You're like, this is the two best casters there are, and they're both from EU. Like for me, I always love Gregan's casting purely because it's like you're learning. Like I'm like one of those people that actually likes learning stuff, and whenever his style of commentating is like a good teacher to you. It's almost like he's coaching you, and like you're going through a VOD review, but it's live. That for me is nuts. And
he's insane. I can't wait for Gregan to come back. So when Vitality eventually go bust and release their Rocket League team because they're doing like shit, come back to us, buddy. We miss you.
Oh, I don't think they're going bust anytime soon by the rumours.
But yeah, obviously the winners of this LAN were PSG, the only LAN that PSG have ever won. The other time, the runners-up being the G2 side. And so you can sort of see the group stage that we had on screen just a moment ago. Actually, this was a really, really fun fact about DreamHack Leipzig was the fact that not only was it a big, not only was it a big LAN with all the big teams, it also had completely open signups. So you had guys like the Dudes and the Juicy Kids, and if you scroll up even further, I think you'll find even more teams like London Esports and Rocketeers. Obviously, spent the centre team.
Well, it had completely open signups, but there was there was online qualifiers, which you had to make it to top 8 or whatever, and then there was another day of closed qualifiers, which was just basically those top 8s going against each other to get a spot in each of the groups. And this was quite a cool one because we saw a lot of teams that you wouldn't expect come through. Like I can remember there was one. I'm trying to look at this. I think it was the dudes from NA that had qualified from online. Of course, they don't have a sponsor, so Psyonix is the ones that picked up that check, and that for me is fantastic for the health of Rocket League.
Yeah, and I mean, just take a look at this. It's like obviously it was a massively hype event. There were some format problems, obviously. I'm actually made a video about that on my channel about how the DreamHack format
I
was
didn't
not.
actually see that.
Well, you can go ahead and watch that. It was a pretty boring video, all things considered. Actually, talking about how like in its practice it doesn't quite work out for open signups. But best of 3 series isn't that first one was not always the best either. So it certainly could have been improved. But as an opening event of the year, honestly, it was hype. It had some really high quality of Rocket League, especially in that playoff. So GG to DreamHack. Let's see. Hope for a good open circuit.
You expect nothing more than brilliant from DreamHack when it comes to their circuits.
Well, it's like it's the Counter-Strike Pro once put it. When I think of DreamHack, I think of excellence.
Yeah,
and that truly is the.
And that is why, like, even on the CS circuit, where the DreamHack sort of like the teams signing up are sort of starting to dwindle because CS is way too oversaturated with tournaments at the moment, it seems. But the prize money is still there. The production quality is still nuts. So even here, when you've got a premier, like I'm saying a premier event, but a top flight, it is another major top flight event for Rocket League here with DreamHack because nothing will be contesting it. DreamHack is going to be, for me, as good as E-League, in that regard to how you expect the quality to come out.
Yeah, and I'm really happy for what DreamHack are going to do in the next year. Of course, the Open Circuit in 2019 is going to be really fun. And another tournament organizer that should be coming back is also Gfinity, because they had 2 tournaments this year. One of which was being the season 3 tournament with their what was it? Their new sort of
format.
Not format. Oh yeah, new format, but also their new teams.
Yeah, the 10 teams. That's what I was saying.
Had a little bit of controversy around one of those teams in particular, didn't they?
Yeah. So there was Unilad, #United, Ares. So more than just one team to have a little bit of controversy about.
What was the other team? Ares or?
Can you not remember Ares?
I mean, they were in one season.
It was Vitality as well that joined that season.
Yeah, but I mean, Ares, I don't remember them doing anything. So
this was Sebadam's roster, and it was the org that just scammed the players out of the money, where they just dropped out. They didn't pay the players any money, and the org owners just ran off.
I was not aware of this.
And they had a lot of footballers backing them.
I was not fucking aware of this. Holy crap!
Yeah, go look into that. It's absolute nuts story.
So, my friend, I feel bad for you, brother. Like, fuck. Oh my god. But obviously, Ares. Do you know what? The thing is that the whole Unilad thing with kicking out Reason Gaming is they were going to pick up Triple Trouble. That was like so significant and so big, and that was the thing that garnered all the Rocket League headlines. I didn't even know about the Ares thing. Like, when did this unfold? After the season or during the season?
So they folded after the season, like it finished. So all the sort of Gfinity news and all that had slowed. So it sort of like just slipped under the rug, where some people picked up on it because it was known, but yeah, it was just that case of players. I reckon
I was completely not aware
probably
of that.
and his crew probably missed out on about 2 months of paychecks. Which
shit!
Don't get me wrong, the Gfinity money, like you're probably looking. Actually, I'm just about to say, don't get me wrong, it's not massive money, but you're probably looking at about $2,000 lost from that each. So
shit, fucking
when you look at Sebdam, I reckon he is still doing Rocket League full time because living with family, they're supporting his dream that
he's
of
part
going
of
pro.
at the moment.
Yeah,
and that's
he is actually living off what is minimum wage.
Well, obviously we always say Unilad are the Mocket 3.0, Ares are the Mocket 10.0 at this point. I just fuck those guys just by default.
Mocket are like just sorry, Ares were like they don't even deserve to be on that sort of level because they didn't get as big as Mocket, They were just like one Gfinity and then they'd sodded
one
off.
Gfinity and then they were a complete fucking failure, as most organizations.
And that's not Gfinity because you look at them, they should have been respectable and all of that. And it's just, I think they got a little bit too in deep. You can't blame Gfinity when someone comes along to buy a franchise spot. They've got the money there, and you go, yeah, sure, that all checks out.
Yeah, I mean, the other big roster and organisation issue is obviously with the Recent Gaming for Unilad sort of swap, and obviously reason we're going to pick up Triple Trouble, and that didn't happen. Triple Trouble were not in the Elite Series, and that's pretty significant considering where Triple Trouble are today.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that was obviously you take a look at that, and I don't have anything against the Unilad side. Or at the time, I think they had what was it, Speed on that roster.
Speed. They were like just basically
I'm
wouldn't
pretty
say
sure
Rando
Tractor can
picks up.
run his mouse over the Unilad thing, and we can have a look see it.
Yeah,
exactly
please do that. Sorry,
run your mouse over the Unilad roster. Let's see who's there.
because I actually can't remember this roster too much.
Yeah, because that's how little they did. Calix, Kara, and Speed. Okay, so, as free agents... Alright.
Got a little bit of a cough, dry throat. That's fine.
Dry throat. Do you want some water, mate?
We have
Did we run out of water?
Yeah, we completely ran out of water. We went through...
2 whole packets yesterday.
Like, we're talking, somewhere between 20 and 30 bottles of water during the 2 days of broadcast.
It's stupid. But yeah, no, obviously this team was like, what the fuck? This is a bunch
like,
of free
I'm looking
agents.
at this going, and that's a good...
well, they're good individually. The problem is that at the time, they were not a team. They were picked up as free agents, versus when Unilad could have picked up Triple Trouble instead, and Reason were already thinking of picking up Triple Trouble, and then obviously we saw how that whole thing went down.
I think it was just pretty much Unilad coming in, just literally trying to pick up a team, maybe even on the cheap. You got to think if Triple Trouble were there.
They didn't give a fuck, let's be honest. Like, Unilad did not give a fuck.
The only one they cared about Street Fighter and FIFA. FIFA majorly, of course. Same reason why #United came in. And Street Fighter a little bit because it's a bit of a, it's all lad sort of culture sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing that's core to their business. So it was the Street Fighter broadcast that were being shared on their main Facebook pages. It was the FIFA broadcast that were being shared on their main Facebook pages. They were tweeting and putting out things about the Call of Duty tournaments that are going on in MLG on their main channels. Rocket League, sweet fuck all.
It was stapled on for them.
It was stapled on for them because of a contractual obligation to join the G4 Elite Series. So fuck you, Unilad. I think I've made my opinions very clear on you. Don't fucking come back. Do not fucking come back.
You stay out there.
So the victory went to Vitality in this land. And obviously we were there at the grand finals. There was an incredible clip of me jumping up in my chair going, yes! And, having a good time with that whole thing.
I still love the bit of Freaky getting picked up by Fairy Peak and Basher just dangling.
Exactly, yeah. But, that whole LAN, that whole LAN and that whole tournament, obviously, it was a little bit one-sided for Vitality because we were taking a look at this whole thing and you can see, there's only one standout team, and that was Vitality. Unfortunately for them, though, after this LAN, they kind of bit Champions Curse in the arse.
Yeah, and that was dropping Freaky purely for personal issues between them. Freaky and Fairy Peak apparently didn't really like each other that much. And you definitely see this in other games where it don't matter if players don't like each other, you work as a team. This Rocket League's it's smaller teams, so that can't really work as well. But here they weren't getting along, so they had to drop in. Well, we saw from this season what happened when you don't have someone like Freaky who can set up Fairy Peak. It just... Vitality got worse. It was a bad transfer. Picking up Scrub Killer, for me, was pretty much picking up Scrub Killer because he's Scrub Killer. It wasn't that it fitted into a team. It's also part of the scariness of if you don't pick up Scrub Killer, someone else is, and someone else gets stronger. So it's like them covering themselves. So this sort of change that is rumoured, the Pashi 4 K-Dot, makes perfect sense because that would be one hell of a team.
That might be one hell of a team, but we'll find out, of course, how those things work out. For Vitality, but this is their main victory of the year. This was their big trophy. Got knocked over by the cameraman, if you remember that outtake. That was fucking fantastic. Don't worry, it's not as bad as the, the Bucharest Gaming Week, where our host was holding the trophy, and he just literally just slumped it down and then just dropped it out of his hand, and the whole thing smashed. It was fucking ouch. Big ouch. But that didn't quite happen at the G4 Elite Series. Of course, that trophy's a lot more stronger.
Yeah.
And it holds a lot more weight, apparently. But there you go.
It did chip off a little bit, but it was
I don't even think it chipped off a little bit. I think it just still worked.
It did. I don't know. We'll have to look back for it, but it don't matter.
Right, but let's move on to some online tournaments now. Of course, the next big thing after the Elite Series was Ballistics Brawl. Now, we were talking about these guys a little bit ago, and obviously how they sponsored things and how they looked on everything. And this was, actually, honestly, a pretty legit tournament.
It was actually a lot of big teams signed up for it. And the biggest thing for here is we saw finally not only the confirmation of the Bricks as a project, that was nuts, and I'm still there in my mind going, what if Bricks didn't get split up? Because this was, and I will always feel sorry for Shackleton about this, but this was like his brainchild of getting players together that can create a whole brand new style of Rocket League. Remember, where it was Fruity being basically the pivot in the center and his two teammates rotating around. It was a really interesting, fun way to play and super fast. But it was basically showing that Speed, Fruity, and Chacaron are fantastic players and they can come through, taking down some RLCS teams. But then at the same time, Flipside coming out and winning that was finally after a very naff season from Flipside. Remember, they only just... they didn't go into the promotion relegation playoff bits, but they came out, I think it was 6th anyway. And it just shows that Flipside can finally show up. And it was like, sticking together was brilliant for Flipside. Because you got to think that same roster, which you'd think now, looking at it, going, oh, they should have just, at the time, maybe they need to change a player or whatever. Look where they came up in LAN, in RSS this season. Like, you're just there going, Flipside were clever to stick together.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that, obviously, is how long it took for them to get that whole thing together. Mm-hmm. Now that they did, this was the first tournament where it was like, okay, they're a legit team now. Yeah. And since then, they've gone on to do some really, really good work in the Rocket League space. Mm-hmm. You know, like having a really good deep run at Worlds, having just really good results in the online tournaments as well. Yep. Since that point, this was the first result. They were like, okay. Flipside, they look pretty legit.
They're back. That was it.
But some other teams I wanted to focus on as well as Complexity. I don't know if you could scroll down for me, Tractor, to the lineups page and have a look at who Complexity had. I believe they had Greasy Meister on at this point. Let's have a look, see. No.
No, it was the original roster.
Okay, sorry. It's the next online tournament we're talking about.
Yeah, but this was still like showing the strength of the Bricks. This is what I'm talking about, where they can take down, run third place LAN at that point. It was just like,
damn, it's right. Apparently, but and then obviously Vitality were already starting to show signs of Champions Curse at this point. Mm-hmm. I think they got out in top 8 in the quarterfinals. I'm sure Tractor can scroll down for us and find out in a couple of moments' time.
Yeah, they were 58 because it was single elim.
Yeah, it was single elimination bracket, and that was when they lost to the Bricks, actually. Yeah, so the Bricks actually.
Bricks. Like I said, they were good.
Now that I'm looking at this bracket, this was a pretty legit run to the finals.
Yeah, and you got to think this was PSG before all the problems as well when they changed over for the Fruity. So you can see PSG losing out to Flipside at that stage. Still a little bit questionable. Flipside then beating out. Who was it they got? It is Parallax. Oh, I have completely forgotten about this. Who was on Parallax? Can you hover over that, Tractor? The Team Dignitas Parallax matchup.
We're going to go to the rosters instead, I think.
We're just because we're a little bit behind as well.
Yep, 2 seconds.
Oh, okay. This is Mouse.
This is Mouse Balls, basically. So this is when they started to have their legit sort of fun.
Okay, cool. Because this would have been the first time that was it Tigre was on the roster, I think, because before that it was Mummy Snow.
Yeah. That's right.
So, yeah, okay, that's a little bit more understandable because I still class Mouse as a good team. I know that we're going to probably be losing Skyline over this next season and that...
Rumours, no legit. Not legit just yet.
No, it's widely known rumours that they are testing out, but they're not confirmed on anyone. Like, I was saying to you, I've seen them trialing out, I think, Nexo and Lauti as well as a lot. Sicky. They're trying out everyone and they're seeing they've got a lot of off-season to work with. Yeah. And then it will be the qualifiers for DreamHack Leipzig, which is the 2nd or 3rd week of January, which we'll finally be able to see, okay, this is who they're going with. This is going to be the new reformed Mouse.
Well, obviously that was the Ballistics Brawl first tournament, and season 2 came up a little bit later on in the year, but we'll come to that because we have a few more tournaments in between that particular period of things. Obviously, we're going in chronological order, and we are running a little bit short for time. So let's try to see if we can blast through these. Yeah, Bacon?
Yep. Let's go for it.
Well,
right, we've got to literally run them now because we are so late. We've got to pick up the other 2 casters.
We've got to take them home.
And literally go drive everyone home. That is my job.
What time's Craftsman's flight? Do you know?
6 this evening, so we're fine.
6 this evening. Okay, so we don't have to worry too much about things. But obviously,
Gatwick's back open. Yay!
Don't have to have a sleeping bum on my couch. I love you, Crawford. But
go.
So, season 5, the winners were Dignitas and the runners-up were NRG. Now, this was
best, arguably still the best series in the world. The whole This is Rocket League
it was
moment.
The This is Rocket League moment, And as well as that, it's not even just that series. The whole LAN had some really, really great moments, especially if you were like us.
Even Geniuses finally showing up was a big one for NA because they finally had a contender into, actually a top 4. EU has had that for a while, but NA didn't. When we look at this as well, it's finally showing, when you go to a bigger, an arena-style event, No, the wraparound, that atmosphere is epic.
Absolutely insane.
Like, that is how
Holy
I think
shit.
Rocket League should be. Not on a stage, like on a theatre sort of stage in front. It should be centre and everyone wrap around for that experience. Sorry for the little hit of the mic there. Yeah, they're not too bad when you do that, but Jay slammed his down on the desk and it really hurt my ears earlier.
Do you want me to do it again?
No, you're good. And this was like the birthplace as well, for anyone that didn't know, of where like the idea for AfterShock started coming around, wasn't it?
Yeah, because at the time I was kind of toying with the idea of doing like a series of Rocket League and analytical videos. But I was also thinking I want to do like a podcast, like a proper thing. So it was around.
And I remember you asked me like, if I do this, will you join me? I was like, yeah. Pretty drunk, of course. And then it came down to a month later.
Then a month later, it was like, oh yeah, do you remember this idea? I was like, no, I was too out of my fucking face at the after party. But you know,
well, I get drunk, but I don't show it, do I?
No, you don't. Honestly, I did not believe you were fucking drunk at all.
hammered.
But you were hammered. But yeah, no, like obviously this was the original birthplace of AfterShock. Because I remember coming out of this land like, right, we need to get this sorted for next season. And that's when the plan was put in motion. That's when I was looking at various people and thinking about who I wanted to be part of this project. And we're here now, being in person, all together, having a good time and talking about some Rocket League. But you know, obviously that was a really cool thing. Best crowd at a Rocket League event ever, by the way. Like
EU
not even a fucking shadow of a doubt. Like there's not been a crowd since since that point or even prior to that point.
Well, it's because it's the whole Team 104 together, everyone wanting, and EU fans are very hardcore. I'm not saying NA fans aren't, of course, but we know that if you want to be, like, chanting is a big part of football culture, which of course is
inherent
Europe.
to British culture as well. You know, in London especially, it's like, oh my fucking god.
Yeah. So like, and we know how to do chants and sort of like match in, because you look at NA chants and that, they're all very generic. Like, let's go G2, clap, 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 clap. That is just, and that is then used for Cloud.
Let's go Cloud9. Let's go EG.
That is it.
Let's go NRG.
Whereas everyone in the EU scene just literally listens on in, and of course you repeat the phrase, oh yeah, that's the squishy muffins they sell you at
Greggs. They sell you at Greggs.
Which he thought was an insult. It's not an insult or anything. It's not even like praising him. It's just
AfterShock.
A pure joke.
Blocked.
But that was the best one there. Or the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. Absolutely love chanting the Pirates
we
of the
could probably
Caribbean
do a whole episode just talking about our
chants,
best fucking our most favourite chants from RLCS. Like fuck, you know what? I'm actually gonna put that down.
Actually, I think this should be a next year thing, because then we would have had 2 years of chants to go over.
Yeah, man.
And literally, we could do top 10 chants from the last 2 years.
Holy shit! Yeah, we'll do that next year. Absolutely, we're gonna do that. But you know, this is also the start or the peak of the Dignitas Dynasty, if you want to call it that. You say 3 tournaments marks the Dynasty.
So they hadn't reached Dynasty yet. The Turbo Pulsar Dynasty, if you want to call it that, definitely hit. Yeah. But not Dignitas. Like, if Dignitas had won this RCS, I would have said that is them. I still don't think 2 lands back to back is ever going to be achieved, but 3, definitely not. And it just shows because Dignitas couldn't do it. Teams had hard countered them. Cloud9 definitely did in their playstyle, just purely making sure that they had one team, the strongest team, they could beat them. We've seen it in lots of other sports, lots of esports, where teams go with that same mindset where they're like, okay, we don't care if we win or lose this tournament, but we make sure we knock down the top dog, because that sends a statement in its own right.
Exactly, and obviously, you know, Dignitas became the best team in the world. They went on, obviously, to do the whole 7-0 thing at the league play, and then obviously I went through the whole upper bracket of the next Worlds, doing really good stuff with that one. You know, obviously Dignitas were the best team in the world at the time.
They made it straight through to uppers, and
that's it. You could argue that even despite their losses in the last 2 tournaments of the year, they still were. This still was the year of Dignitas.
Yeah. It definitely was the year of Dignitas. I think that's more of a thing we can talk about in another podcast later down the line. But we'll talk about that again later on, because we've still got more tournaments to do. Obviously, trying to do quick fire rounds, because Northern Arena happened as well immediately after following that tournament. Unfortunately for me, Northern Arena is probably my most forgettable tournament of the year.
Yes.
It was very much late announced and very much rushed. It felt. I love that they got the community casters in, Stax and Vodable. And actually, no, Stax went to the LAN final, sorry. It was Tom Kelly, Vodable, in for the qualifiers, and they actually went out to the studio. So I'm loving that they're actually taking that seriously, not just online stuff.
Yeah.
But it did very much, like, there was a lot of audio tech issues for me. This was just the one which was
Ping.
amongst a lot of work.
The ding.
Don't get me wrong.
Do you remember that?
Oh god, yeah. Wasn't that like a sound from like the reception or some sort of shit? Or
No, because it was in like a science expo, so I think they were showing off like an experiment in the background. So it was just like this occasional just ping going off of whatever the fuck it was, and I was just like.
But the setup to this, I will say, is brilliant. Where they did a lot of online, they did online qualifiers for each region to the point which Excel went through, FlyQuest, which at that point was an RLRS team, I'm pretty sure. That is what I want to see, is more like the DreamHack sort of thing, where these lower teams have a chance to make it onto those big stages. It's what's needed. You can't just keep shoveling the same RLCS teams to everything, which is my only problem. Like, I wish we could have this with E-League to some extent, because it just feels like top 8 from RLCS, and then 2 weeks' time they've got to play again at E-League. To me, that just feels a little bit I would love top 4 from ROCS to go through, and then 4 from open qualifiers.
Despite that though, I don't think E-League was a really fucking baller.
Oh, it's always a baller event.
Unfortunately,
it's top
Northern
class.
Arena.
It is the top class.
Yeah.
It's the best Rock League you'll see.
But Northern Arena was also not the top tournament for certain. I mean, if you scroll down to the bracket real quick, you'll see that pretty much all of the results went about as well as you would have thought they would have gone. I think we'll just find out just very quickly. It was a double elimination bracket, and it's sort of like, well, yeah. Dignitas beating NRG beating Flipside, Cloud9 losing NRG.
That was all expected, yeah.
There's no results. You look at this and it's like, okay, well, that seems like an interesting upset, or that's something really, that could be a good match, or it was a good match. Like, it's just this is expected.
I think the best one for that was actually the losers round 2. If you guys can see that on your screen, where it all went to game 5. And that was near enough the flip point where it nearly got upsets, but there was no real upsets in this tournament.
That said, you take a look at that entire line from the semi-finals and losers round 2. Like, they were all game 5. So that may have been the most interesting phase of the tournament. But again, no results, so you say, okay, that's quite interesting.
Close results, good games, I remember them. But again, no upsets in tournaments. And upsets generally do make more tournaments, make tournaments memorable.
Yeah, there's a reason why we remember why NRG versus Dignitas, because NRG, you take a look at it, it was like, okay, yeah, they're a
bracket
good team,
reset,
but they've got to go for a bracket reset, and they've got to beat who are the best team in the world right now. And they still got the first series. It was like, holy shit. They lost the second series in 7-game fashion, though. And it's like, fuck me, an upset followed by a near upset. It's the same reason why I remember the 1K Cup so much. Speaking of which, the 1K Cup. Now, the winners of this one were Dignitas. The runners-up were Smiley Face, who consisted of Fairy Peak, Mout, and Scrub Killer, who were basically a mixed team performing off of what would end up being the majority of the Vitality lineup later on down the road.
Well, Mout, yeah, it's actually quite funny because Mout, I think, is still the sub for Vitality, so it is basically Vitality.
It pretty much is.
That is
But this was fucking insane. I mean, if you just take a look at the bracket again, we just scroll straight down towards it and just see how Smiley Face's run sort of mounted up throughout the course of that entire thing. You can see how they were knocked out against Flipside Tactics. Not against Flipside Tactics, against Complexity, after they just knocked Flipside Tactics into the lower bracket. And then they had to go through upset after upset after upset to get to Dignitas. They went against the Bricks. I would have said that maybe they could have won against the Bricks, but the Bricks were also looking solid at this point.
Yep.
And they didn't. They went to PSG, beat them, went to Complexity, beat them, and then they went to Dignitas, and this was like the online version of the RLCS Grand Finals, 4-2 and 2-4.
It's just Dignitas had the longevity, because exhaustion does get you at this point, and Smiley Face, that just, for me, that shows what they were hoping with Scrub Killer being able to be brought into the mix with that sort of synergy between Fairy and Scrub, but it just didn't work out last season. And Mout's an interesting player because with the right team, he could be an RLCS player. He is definitely RLRS caliber, without a doubt, but he's always played sub. And for me, I've always found that really weird.
Yeah, pretty much. It is quite weird, but I still remember the everyone was taking a look at this team.
Who knows? If it don't work with K-Dop, we might see Mount replace K-Dop.
No, man.
That would be massive.
Mount was everyone was saying he's super underrated, and everyone was taking a look at the whole thing and saying Rocket League has changed today because they were thinking to themselves, fuck, this could be a brand new team entirely. I mean, it wasn't in the end. It was still just Scrub Killer moving on to the Vitality lineup. But holy shit. Again, this was one of the best grand finals I've ever casted for Rocket League and across my entire career, including Counter-Strike stuffs.
It was a good grand final.
It was a good grand final, and I wish the VOD was still up on Twitch. fuck you, Quent, for not saving it. Like, seriously, can I just say, this is, as I mentioned to all tournament organisers, put your VODs on YouTube, because some games like this, they are unforgettable and they don't deserve to be forgotten. So it takes literally... It takes 2 minutes. It takes 2 minutes. If you can't render it off of, like, download it through a fucking VOD downloader like Twitch Leecher, and then just like cut it up in Premiere Pro or even fucking Movie Maker for fuck's sake, and just do that and then just put it out on YouTube. You can literally highlight each game on Twitch and then post it to YouTube. Like, just do it. Please just do it. Seriously, it makes my life easier because I get to add shit to my portfolio, and
it is definitely for the portfolio aspect.
Well, that is only part of it for our personal interest. For the rest of Rocket League, though, it's just great to watch these matches again, and to have them there for all of time.
I think as well, for future YouTube videos, you could look at the history and historical aspect of Rocket League, and that is really cool. I think for me. But yeah, moving on to the next one, of course, and then we had 2 tournaments go back to back. We had Rocket Baguettes.
Well, I mean, technically 3 online tournaments going back to back to back, because it was 1K, then Baguettes.
Yep. Sorry, I forgot about that. I thought that, I was taking way too much time between the 1K and the play. But yeah, just said it there. The play, the Coliseum, and what was essentially the taster I put before the Renegade Cups. Like, this was Psyonix coming out to the EU community, definitely, and going, what can you guys do? And, there was a lot that they can do.
Summarizes it pretty well, I think. Yeah, like, this was a really, really good tournament. I still remember watching it, because I recently, at that time, I recently got my new 50-inch TV.
Yep.
Special shout out to Tractor Manager, by the way, hooking me up with that thing. It was fucking amazing. I still remember bringing that and putting it up and putting the Grand Prix up on there, and I remember enjoying it so much because of how many times Triple Trouble showed up. Yeah. This was Triple Trouble's tournament, and you can see it right there on the bracket. The number of teams they had to go through to get and beat Dignitas, like, fucking hell. They had to beat Smiley. Who I believe is that Smiley Face? That wouldn't be Smiley Face because it's Reno Vitality, so a different Smiley Face.
No, I'm just quickly getting in to have a little look.
Unless Tractor wants to scroll back up and find the roster for us.
Oh yeah, in the qualifiers, that was.
So not quite. Okay, so different roster.
I thought that was Zedo's team, and then I'm like, oh no, that was Unique Stars. But yeah, Frisk, Sebadam, and Itachi. That was back when Sebadam was trying out rosters. Now he's with the current Epsilon one. But yeah, took them down. Then PSG, Weedham Girls, Method, and then Dignitas. Like, damn, son.
Fucking insane. Like, again, 3-2 series across almost the entire board, except against Method, who was still sort of like struggling around about that time, because that was Rix, Ronde, Burrito B, and Chakaron was in the team at the time.
And I remember this is where the Clappers logo came from, because the French guys made them the logo for this. Because every team had to have a logo when they got through to the stage.
Except Smiley.
No, Smiley did have a logo, and it was just like colon D. Like, it was a little. Right. Yeah, it was more like a weird one, but yeah.
Yeah, but like, Triple Trouble, like, this is that again. You can't deny results like that. PSG, Weedham Girls, Method, and Dignitas back to back against Method and Dignitas through a 4-1 series.
They had the hardest run, I'd say.
Easily the hardest run.
Maybe not Method, but that's because you would have expected Complexity to make it through there, and it was more like, damn, Method doing well.
I think this was also the first event where Complexity had Greasy Meister. No, that was the 1K Cup.
Yep.
And Greasy Meister. So you can see this is where things also did start to fall apart for the Complexity side. So, just going through history of how things worked out for them. But yeah, Triple Trouble, fucking A. And obviously that led to them being signed by Red Reserve a little bit later on down the line. But they still had one more top 4 before they got there. And obviously that other top 4 came from Rewind's the Coliseum. Now, obviously we just come off the back of a Rewind tournament. And the thing that initially kicked off that whole Neon Dream thing was with the Coliseum.
Yeah, it was.
And it was, like, again, this is such a good fucking tournament, man.
Like, it was quite funny, actually, because the response from Psyonix, like, when we did that, was like, we want to do, like, gladiators battling out. It's like, okay, you've got to be careful with your terminology. Like, originally we had, different, like, the 3 different stages names, like, the pits weren't allowed. And it was just there, like, well,
I mean, they allowed that for fucking, what was it, League of Rockets, wouldn't they?
Yep.
The pit, the gate... The gatekeepers, and then the final.
Yeah, but it was like that case of we're trying to go with like gladiatorial combat, that sort of thing. Had to really talk down like stuff like couldn't use weapons, like and all of that, because naturally PG game. But afterwards they were like, we loved your theme for this. For the next thing you do, Neon Dream, You have to just up the theme to the max, and that's what we did. And this, for me, because I designed this entire tournament, and that what I wanted to do is every single win, you get money. You double your money. So it's like just that's complete cash up to the point where I think the finalists got. It wasn't like a massive amount for a finalist prize pool. It was only, I think, $1,920 off the top of my head. But of course, it was doubling every single time. So if you had won one game in the top 32, you had prize pool money. That is something you don't see, and that's what I thought was quite cool about this. So 16 teams walked away with some money.
Yeah, and that's really, really hype, obviously, because there's a lot of teams that are in this sort of like lineup. Unfortunately, we can't show them all on screen because that's how fucking big this bracket is. Like, holy shit.
Well,
that's not going to stop Tractor from trying, so you have to scroll by and leave Dig and WLF back up the side. But you can see PSG are in there, Complexity are in there, Blitzers are in there.
Blitzers, that's another one.
Well, that's the point of the show, isn't it?
We thought Blitzers were going to be bigger than what they are now, but then, in good Rocket League fashion, they split up.
Hindsight is 2020. But yeah, the winners of this one, as you can see, were Dignitas. Dignitas. I've been so fucking used to saying that.
Remember, this was the nuts one where Fnatic took down Dignitas.
Yes, that was a massive upset, obviously, for Fnatic, and it's kind of trying to see if they can resurge their way back into the fold. Didn't quite work out the way that they wanted it to. For
were they even playing with Mummy Snow in this tournament at this point? I can't remember. Tractor.
Hey.
He gets.
Man's on the ball. He knows exactly what he's doing.
With Mummy Snow. Fnatic. Can literally see this is on the fly, guys. I'm looking at some of these teams like, Diffuse Kids. Jeez.
It was Mummy Snow. So yeah, there we go. Oh. This is where the Danish dominance, or the Danish sort of like...
Yes.
The Danish dominance started to take hold. And again, against Dignitas, that's no small fucking feat.
No, it's not. And Dignitas must have just had a really... that series, no, I can't remember it being enough, because I was about to say it must have had enough day, but I'm like, nah, Fnatic just really showed up for it, and...
Yeah. And eventually they would go on to lose against Weedem Goals. Was it Weedem Goals or PSG? Yeah. Weedem Goals. And obviously there was the triple trouble thing against PSG on the other side of the bracket, and that was also an insane series. I still remember casting that with Crafters. Yep. And just the amount of times we fucking lost our shit. Just like, oh my god. Can we calm down, please? It's just an online tournament, but no, this
online tournaments can be best tournaments sometimes.
Exactly. And they were, these three tournaments back to back were just all amazing. 1K Cup was a nice Kickstarter. The play was an amazing mid-form, and then Colosseum just to hype it up and cap it off for a massive 3 tournament.
And the start of PSG being known as an ultimate online team. Yes. They didn't do it during league play, but every single little one-off tournaments, PSG expect them to get blooming far. Like, they can real contest online.
Exactly. Well, that was the last of the online tournaments before we moved into the latter part of the year, where we started to look at the RLCS sort of league play, and of course Season 6 rolled around, the Vegas show, where the overall winners were Cloud9, with the runners-up of Dignitas. Holy crap! I remember,
this is also the crumbling of Dignitas, because ever since then, when they get to these top stages, they have started to show some real frustration against these top teams, because they're so used to winning that they don't know how to handle this at the moment as a team, and that's why you're starting to see this sort of like transfer talk coming about, because it seems like they're trying to pin the blame on someone and then start anew.
Yeah, but Cloud9 had a really, really good tournament of their own right. I mean, if you go to the bracket, their lower bracket run was insane. Like, they went through, they were out in, I think, the quarterfinals or something like that. I think Tractor can try and bring that up for us if he could.
They dropped to Flipside, wasn't it?
Yeah, the bracket.
For this one?
Yeah, let's have a look. It was against Weedem Girls.
That was it in the very first match, and then had to do the entirety of the run.
Go through. Then again, it's the same sort of thing with how Triple Trouble faced up against in Ballistics. Titan Mines, NRG, Flipside, Cheese, Weedem Girls, back to back results. It's like fucking
this
hell.
is literally them getting harder opponents every single step
and
of the
way. And it caps off with the world's best, where they absolutely destroyed Dignitas.
4-1 twice in a row. That is nuts.
And as you say, this was the start of the crumbling, because Dignitas, I don't think they were, obviously it's the end of the year, so they didn't have much time, but they couldn't quite recover from this sort of loss,
No. I mean, we saw it again as well at E-League, which, I mean, we can go on to, just on to now here, Jay, with Cloud9 getting to the stage, and it was just only Weedem Girls that could stop them, because...
Yeah. Well, I mean, as well as that, I don't want to just say, obviously Dignitas still had a really good year.
Oh, yeah.
To cap it off, like 3 back-to-back top 2 finishes at Worlds. Like that's insane. That's not insane. I don't think people obviously with Dignitas being the winners that they are, winning like basically every single tournament they're a part of.
I personally think the strongest thing for Dignitas right now is not to split up, not get rid of K-Dot, stick together and go through coaching, and try and get that team morale back
regain
on track.
that morale and regain that mentality that
is the wisest choice of Dignitas.
Yeah, and obviously Dignitas, as you were saying, didn't quite work it up in the E-League, which we'll move on to talk about right now. Obviously,
they were semi-finalists though, so that's still really good.
Yeah, again, top 4 is not a bad placing. I think that's the one thing that people seem to make a mistake when they're talking about Dignitas, is just the fact that Dignitas is such a well, they were known and everyone was looking at them like, as the narrative was just, this is the best that Rocket League has ever had. And obviously they've fallen off the edge of the cliff since then. But at the same time, again, as you say, they made it to the semi-finals. They tied up with NRG. They lost to, was it Cloud9, I believe it was in the bracket?
Yep, I'm pretty sure it was anyway, because I swear it was...
Oh, wow. That group layout is pretty shit.
Yeah, because it's like loads of different little double LM groups. But it was... Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Cloud9 that Dignitas, again, could only 4-1. And then it was NRG, they stood up a decent fight against Weedham Girls, but it wasn't good enough. Weedham Girls, it started off real even, and then Weedham Girls just, pulled away.
Yeah, and the key thing about Dignitas as well is that this is where we saw them struggle against EU teams as well. It's 4-3 against Evil Geniuses, which is a repeat result of their Worlds performance. And against Flipside, a team that were up and coming, sure, but Dignitas, they were able to deal with them and so many more online. And here on LAN at E-League, they had a struggle. They struggled really, really hard against the likes of Flipside, and it took them. And the Flipside obviously ended up dropping to lose to Weedham Girls anyway, who had already lost to Flipside earlier in the day, so they had a bit of a lower bracket run to get back into the semi-finals of their own right. But Dignitas, as you say, things have gone wrong in that camp, and again, I do think that the main thing to focus on is trying to see if they can regain that mentality and that winner's sort of attitude.
Yep, definitely, because they're all good players, and we've seen what they can do together. But I mean, I just don't think they should split up. They're too good for
absolutely
that.
Not.
Your only other option is you look at it and go, okay, if players want to move, and maybe the org, Dignitas, can make a little bit of money off the transfer of a player because, part of the contract, if another org is looking to buy out a player out of their contract, Dignitas can make a bit of money out of that. So you've got to look at it from a business perspective there.
They could as well. But obviously the other big thing as well was Weedham Girls winning out at this one. This was a fucking feels good, man, because they were a team on the rise. The only tragedy I feel is Flipside not making it out of that group, but obviously they were seeded into the group of death anyway, so it was going to have to be one of them. But, Weedham Girls, an unsponsored team winning the biggest first place prize, with the exception of the RLCS. That's
with little shitty watercoloured shirts. I love them.
No, do you know what? That just capped it off for me. Just that whole thing.
No, I'm saying his name is shitty watercolours.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Best.
No, that's the best thing in the world. That whole thing is just capped it off. It's like, we're serious, we're hard men, and then we've got shitty watercolour on our chests.
Yeah.
It's like fucking A. And Weedham Girls, obviously, I'm really hoping that they get a really good org coming in the new year. Obviously, we have...
Again, I've already said about it, whereas they're like, if only Weedham Girls had stuck around and became their own org, like a player org, that would just been nuts to see, but it don't work. It rarely works even in the top sort of teams. Yeah. There's still got to be massive backings. We'd be talking I don't know, the owner of Chelsea and the Emirates and all of that, just come in and then buy the team and sort of and just back them. That's the only way it would have worked, is a big sponsor.
Yeah, well... Obviously, E-League was a fantastic tournament. Loved every bit of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to catch the next tournament we're going to talk about because we're coming up to the last 2 tournaments of the year. Obviously, Gfinity Elite Series Season 4 was the last big EU LAN. The winners of which were Method, the runners-up were Fnatic. I know that you had a chance to watch most of this tournament. But, obviously, there were a lot of big storylines coming out over the course of the few weeks. And we were covering it on AfterShock. We're talking about stuff like Method's dominance, Fnatic starting to go back up and stopping the spiral downwards, Vitality losing out, Reason making their return. Fuck you, Unilad. Hashtags...
We love Reason, by the way, just for the guys working it as well. I still think Reason needs to stick around purely because it'd be a clever sort of academy team for the Gfinity sides to be able to... Because there is money with it, because Gfinity needs money at the moment. They are running at a loss, as a lot of esports orgs and that do. But for them to be able to ferry through and use it as academy, that could be quite a clever little role for them, and definitely picking up stuff like this, the attempt with Chakron in his previous work makes perfect sense for that to be him to sort of lead up the Reason roster and just basically use it as an academy team to ferry players through.
Yeah, and obviously, some of the teams that they didn't quite make it to those playoff brackets, particularly Vitality and Hashtag were just like, these guys were like really, really big standout talking points throughout the entire season because Vitality were not performing in the same sort of way. Then Hashtag were doing really, really well, and then they fell off the edge of a cliff somehow, and they were looking
Don't
quite
know what
dejected
happened
about
there.
it. Yeah, things are not looking great for that camp, and there are some. It does kind of prove the idea that there are a lot of really good teams that could show up on land in the EU scene, And Gfinity is just a really, really good platform for those players.
Yeah, and Gfinity also shows like what Fnatic are like at that level with. You've got RLRS teams there. It's just last year they looked pretty bad in the last season purely because they were against top flight teams. You get natural different levels in ability. So Fnatic at RLRS, I'm expecting them to finally be able to put on some good performances. Again, it is just because they don't have Dignitas to deal with.
Exactly.
They don't have Flipside. They don't have Weedham Girls. Now, like I said though, it will be nuts because you got to think Method there once again, who they have lost to Secret. You've got XL coming through again, which I know XL didn't make it through to this stage, but this was like them going through a troublesome period. Remember, it was only like in the last week or two that they did bring in Breezy, and you got to think there's got to be a bit of change time.
Yeah, and I feel like, again, XL is one of those rosters in the Elite Series that could do good things. Obviously, we're taking a look at roster changes, and I think the whole landscape is going to be completely shuffled for next season.
Yeah.
Except for Method, of course. Method are going to dominate everybody.
Method going to dominate. They're going to stick together because if they do change up, then dumb boys.
Right, okay, well, let's move on to the final tournament we're going to talk about, which is the Renegade Cup as a whole. Obviously, this is the final tournament of the year. Try and see if we can shoot through this quick because my laptop is running out of battery.
So quickly, the 3 teams already be confirmed through to February is Secret, Method, and Red Reserve.
That's true, yes.
Yes. Savage, the only one really. We expect Savage to be taking it next month, don't we? Probably. I mean, XL could probably do an upset, or we could see a team like Stratus or French Fries, like one of those bubble teams, have an absolute stellar performance again. But money, you'd probably be betting it on Savage. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and taking a look at sort of like how these tournaments worked up, obviously it was
top 4 really from last RLRS as well.
That is true. Yeah, but the way that these rosters, the way that these tournaments were played out, obviously it was really cool to see some creative ideas coming out for the likes of Studio Finals by Veritas and Rewind, and kind of the Rocket Baguette guys as well did that with the French stream.
The French stream had it. The English stream didn't because we just didn't have any budget. The French guys were sort of living with having to do 2 productions from one budget.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shit situation, but it was all right. It was fine. I mean, in the end of the day, they still put on a really good tournament, and it was fucking fantastic. And then seeing teams like Stratus come out in the woodwork, and obviously we'll talk about them a little bit earlier on in the show, and how they sort of come to rise to prominence. And just sort of seeing how the months have gone by, how the level of Rocket League has managed to stay really, really good, even though all the good teams have gotten past those stages. Like, it's a really cool, creative sort of way to get things to kick things off in the bubble scene and to get this whole scene kickstarted and rebooted. I think. Yeah,
definitely. Like the Renegade Cup cannot chirp on about it enough, really, can we? Of like how this is good for the community stuff, and. Yeah, I have no reason to believe that it's not going to return next year. At some point, like it will return. Like next Renegade Cup will start in April, but I think it'll probably be about the same rough timescale again because I'd imagine Science might have some other plans here and there,
Well, let's see how that all works out. Obviously, we're really hyped for another Renegade Monthly. We're really hyped for another Renegade Cup as a whole. Still got the January one to go through, so it's not quite over yet, but obviously it is technically the Renegade Cup 2018.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it at that right there. And again, it's a nice tournament that showcases the depth of the EU
depth. NA, I've been looking at it, cast over a little bit of it. I can definitely tell you.
I only did the Rival Esports one by myself.
But yeah, I can see NA doesn't have that same level of depth, but they've got a lot of uncertainty at the moment, where a lot of the RLRS teams have split and gone their own separate ways, and it's like a new reformation of NA, which could be good for them, of course, because that then means you can start up some new projects which work. But NA, they don't have anything on us EU lads.
That's why AfterShock is specifically EU only. So,
why waste your time?
Fuck you, NA. And with that being said, we're done.
That's how we end out the EU podcast with just a big fuck you.
Yes, it's been a very, very fun year, obviously. 2018 really has been a nice little wave for Rocket League. Obviously, this podcast has happened. It's been an absolute pleasure doing it for you all. It's been a pleasure every single week to join yourself, Mr. Digital Bacon.
Oh, thank you.
And that's going to be our year wrapped up, I believe. So with that being said, do you have any final thoughts, not only for this show, but also for 2018 in Rocket League?
I'm just glad I finally got you in my bedroom. I can say that.
Was that your plan this entire time?
Yeah, that was clearly it. No, that was just what I thought up on the spot. So, without further ado, on that bombshell, we're going to say goodbye, and we shall see you in 2019.